Hey, what's up, everybody? You're listening to Cyberpunk Uncensored, and I am Rob Mulligan. Today, I have a special guest with me, Ellen from Roll to Cast. What's up, Ellen?
Oh, nothing much, just the world crumbling around me.
Yeah, yeah. Aside from that, how you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, not too bad actually. Just recovering from I don't know, I think it's summer for you, but it's winter here in Australia
Oh,
and it is nippy.
wow. Yeah, here in Los Angeles, we actually have a really bad heat wave this past week, and
Yeah,
it's horrible. They
I
have
keep
rolling blackouts,
hearing.
and there's fires going on. It's just
Oh
unbelievable.
shit. So it's like Australia there for you guys, huh?
Yeah, it's like
Because
a
I'm like,
it's like a version of Cyberpunk where it's very heavily post-apocalyptic based, you know?
yeah, I'm just like, So you're in a heat wave. There's bushfires everywhere. Are you sure you're not in Australia?
Right.
Do you see a koala anywhere near
No, no.
you? Okay, well,
But yeah, aside
time
from
will tell.
that and obviously all the quarantine and riots and protests and politics stuff going on and
Yeah,
all that bad shit, um there's at least cyberpunk going on, and that's what I'm excited to talk to you about.
yeah, absolutely. I
So
mean, cyberpunk sadly has moved into the real world,
I know.
as they always predicted it would.
Right.
But
No,
so I'm
exactly.
I'm this close to strapping on, getting my wolvers and um, my cybernetic
Oh
eyes,
yeah,
and then
we're
just
almost
going
there.
out and
We're almost
starting
there.
shit.
Yeah. But no, what really, I mean, ultimately, what got you into cyberpunk or role playing in general? Like, which came first for you? Like, for me, I started with D&D, and then once I got into cyberpunk, it was like I'm just obsessed with it. But what got you going?
Well, I didn't start role playing until really, really late. It was kind of like a business decision from our company, Baby Beard Media, because we have one podcast that's like an ongoing one, where we watch Futurama episodes. It's called Shut Up and Take My Podcast, and that's
Yeah.
coming to an end at the moment. And the whole gimmick of our show, or ourselves as performers, is that we are actually all creatives in some way. Most of us are actors with a theater background, and then we've also got one director and producer. And so we were like, how do we utilize our, you know, considerable acting talents with our interest in nerd shit? So we started this podcast called Roll to Cast, and we really wanted to explore role-playing games that weren't just D&D, because like the market is so saturated with D&D
Oh yeah.
podcasts. And as much as we all dabble, I think a little bit in D&D. I've got an ongoing I'm playing in an ongoing campaign,
Nice.
where I play as I call her Nicki Minaj the half orc, um but her name is Sparkles, and she's just real big,
Nice. Hell yeah.
real, knows what she wants, which is usually sex and killing. Um, but yeah, so we wanted to explore games that are more genre based, that you can kind of make more compelling stories and really play with genre. So our first season of Roll to Cast was Cyberpunk 2020, because obviously we heard about 2077, and we were like, oh, this is a really interesting world. And at the moment, like the fan community and people who are excited for it is just bubbling away and simmering, simmering, simmering. So everyone kind of wants to get in on the action. So what better to do than go back to the very roots and do 2020? So we did that campaign. Our next season was Vampire the Masquerade,
Uh-huh.
because our producer Chris, he has been playing Vampire the Masquerade, I shit you not, for like over 10 years, like closer to 20.
Wow.
And he's only 29. So he
Yeah.
started very young. So then we did Vampire the Masquerade. And bit of a humble brag, but our latest season, which is releasing as we speak, is Cyberpunk Red, because we
Yep.
got in contact with Artelzorian Games. We got to interview Mike on our show, and Jay, and they gave us the beta rules for Cyberpunk Red. No biggie.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's so exciting that, from 2020, and we got our little grubby hands on Red, And we get to really explore the world
So
before
cool.
anyone gets the full rule set.
Oh, it's so awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of my background. I've always wanted to do more role playing stuff, but I'm really shit at maths. So D&D for me was always a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Whereas I like a lot of D10 or D10 systems. I really like how Cyberpunk works because it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, it I think our GM Phil was saying, or referee in Cyberpunk as it were, it has so much more capacity to swing both ways. Either you've got a lot more likelihood of making big successes or big fails.
Right. No, I feel like I always like to say it's more based in it has like more of a reality foundation, whereas like D&D and the other ones feel
Absolutely.
very fantasy, but Cyberpunk is more like you're not playing a weird other race. There's different races within being a human, but you can connect
Yeah.
on that level, and then within that, it's just, I don't know, it's more cutthroat. There's no magic or like a potion you can take to heal yourself.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. I love it because of that.
Absolutely. Because when I play in D&D, I feel kind of invulnerable. I've got a super tank character essentially, and not only that, D&D kind of facilitates a more not gentle way of playing because it's all combat based, but you are big damn heroes,
Right.
and for the most part, you live to fight another day.
Right. I
Whereas,
think my one of my friends, he plays in one of our ongoing campaigns that I GM. He kind of put it like D&D coming from that, like you play and you see a horde of goblins or a horde of this, and it's like, let's go kill them or let's go do
yeah,
this. And whereas in Cyberpunk, like you see a group of like solo assassins or corporate guards, and
yeah.
it's like you don't just rush right into it, like you will die.
Yeah.
Like
Or
it's
even
just
a
different.
booster gang, you're just like, no,
Right.
fuck this noise. I'm gonna take a walk around the block.
Yeah, like it just you're more tactful in Cyberpunk. It just feels more real and dangerous.
Yeah.
But
And I think that really helps you sink into the role playing of it,
oh, totally. It's
Because
very
it's like,
immersive because of that. Yeah.
yeah, because it's like, as much as I pretend, have I crushed a man's head between my thighs? No.
Right.
But like, have I seen a kind of group of shady people on the street and had to kind of use my wit and guile to kind of just talk my way out of it? Yes, I have.
Right.
So it's like, Cyberpunk's not so different from our own world. You just get to really go back at the system, which is really cool and
Exactly.
my favorite thing about
And
it.
and part of that low life comes with that high tech, that high tech low life, sort of
Yeah.
gameplay. So it just comes with all those cool cybernetics and things like that. So it's just so cool. But before we get into that, because I do want to talk about Red and dive a little bit more in detail about cyberpunk stuff, but I just want to mention to anybody listening, I know we mentioned it before, but check out Roll to Cast. That's the podcast that we were just talking about, where her and her friends, post their gameplay. And I know
Yeah.
there's some people that don't like watching or listening to gameplay, some that do. I'm one of those that I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I listen to all the podcasts. I've listened to all your guys' episodes, and then I watch other streams. I stream 2 games weekly on Mulligan Live on YouTube, plus I do this podcast. But I love it. Even every day when I work out every day, I'm obsessed with that too. But when I do that, I don't even listen to music anymore doing that. I'll typically listen to gameplay while I'm working out.
Yeah.
I love it. But
Yeah, you're all up in it.
oh man,
I like that we
obsessed.
kind of approach it more. I think the way I learn things, it's much easier to see how someone does it. So I think
Hell yeah.
hopefully when people listen to our Red campaign, which is called Feed the Beast, they'll be able to see the things in action, because it's all very well and good to go, okay, oh, now you can grapple a guy.
Exactly.
Cool,
But
but
it's
then
cool to
it's one
see it
thing
like
to actually,
to see the process kind of play
Yeah.
out, so you can see exactly the order of events and how it goes. And I think the cool thing about having the advanced Red thing, like you guys posting that the actual gameplay, and I know you're not allowed to go into detail about the specific rules or read from the
No.
book. I know exactly, because I have an advanced copy as well for our stream for our games, so we can kind of
Yeah.
talk about it a little. But I do I understand the NDA aspect to it. But
Yeah.
but I love the fact that you post the gameplay and people can listen to that and pick up little cool pieces of things that, oh shit, okay, that's how they're doing this now, and oh, that seems to be different, and net running works like this now, and it's so cool to be able to, I don't know, hype it ahead of time. I really like
Yeah,
that.
that's one of the things that I'm most excited for in or one of the things that really got me jazzed for Red not even for my character, but one of our players, Chris, he plays as a netrunner. And in 2020, reading the netrunning thing made my head explode a little bit.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
said, I'm not. It takes me kind of a considerable effort to kind of really get into the game mechanics. And net running seemed really, really hard for me. I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh, net running in Cyberpunk 2020 is for expert gamers.
Right. Well, and it's also
You
it kind
know?
of takes away from the group. There's just certain things about it that are just too crunchy and too detached from the team, you know? So
Yeah.
like I feel and well I know that like a lot of GMs they wouldn't even incorporate net running into 2020 when they would play or they would totally homebrew lots of it, you know? And
Yeah.
and I agree with you. I think the way Red is doing it, it's just so streamlined and awesome.
And the best thing about it is it's so easy to visualize. Um,
Yeah.
in our campaign, some of our net running sections are some of my favorite pieces of content because it's just like it is honestly like you're in this Matrix kind
Right.
of VR thing where you can still kind of see the architecture of the place that you're physically in, the meat space, but then you can also see,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
net
It's more like
and how that
AR than VR. It's like,
yeah, how that
both.
kind of
Yeah.
overlays over.
So cool.
And the whole idea of it being like an elevator, so you kind of go level 1, level 2, and you know
Yeah.
that kind of visualization is so helpful, but also so fucking cool.
Right. What else? What other
Yeah.
things like since you've played 2020 as well and you're
Mm.
familiar? So like, what other? And obviously, like like we said, we can't go into extreme detail, but what are some of your favorite things that they've changed? Like for me, I love, what they did with role abilities. Like for instance,
Mm.
like how the solo can allocate his points into kind of subcategories before entering combat to do different things. It's no longer just this number that adds to your initiative and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the gameplay a lot more specific, and and not just the gameplay, your ability to role play and figure out how your character kind of lives in the world. Because in 2020, I played as a rocker,
Nice.
um, and so you had the whole thing about ensemble and entourage and whatever, and a kind of vague number system for if you are this popular, then you'd probably have this many people as your little posse that you can kind of call on from time to time. But it was a bit, I think it was kind of based on your own skill and judgment to what that number would be, who those characters might be, and how you could kind of, you had to be a bit more creative in figuring out how to utilize them.
Yeah.
Whereas I didn't look up so much of the rocker stuff in Red because I kind of focused on I play a nomad in our Red campaign.
Yep.
So I kind of wanted to focus on the thing I'd actually be playing, otherwise my head
Well,
would explode.
and I definitely want to get into the nomad stuff too because I
Oh
love what they
yeah,
did there too. But going back to what you
for
were
sure.
saying about the
But
rocker
yeah,
boy.
with the roles, it's a definite number. So if you are
Right.
this rank, then you are about this equivalent of being famous, So it kind of goes from you're in the indie scene, people who know ya, to maybe you're starting to get a lot more looks off the street, to like, holy shit, you're Johnny Silverhand. You just point at someone and
Exactly.
they'll go.
And I love how it's kind of an ongoing role or whatever, role ROLL instead of ROLE, meaning that
Yeah,
like in that stat or skill, I should say, that role ability, how like as you're going around the city or meeting people or interacting, if you want to kind of pull that angle, like, well, I'm a fucking rocker, don't you know me, sort of thing or whatever, you can
exactly.
constantly like roll to that ability to see within a certain number of people what you can influence or whatever. I don't know. It's just like you said, it goes more into depth and it's so cool.
Yeah, and it fits in more. It's less of a an estimation on the referee's part to how they could make that work.
Yeah.
Phil, our referee for 2020 and Red, he's amazing. He's so into it. And both of the stories that we've played are his original creations. But I know with Rocker, he was kind of, there was a lot more guesswork involved with would this person know you? And
Right.
oh well, you must have a gig coming up, so you'd have to prepare for that. So maybe we'll make some roles around you writing song lyrics and things like that. Whereas it just integrates more with the gameplay in Red so there's less guesswork for the referee to kind of go off on.
Exactly. And I think they did something very similar, like with the exec, which is what the corp is or whatever. But
Yeah.
very similar, where they got, kind of specific with like what kind of support you can actually pull on, like what exactly your resources are. Like it's very specific now, and I love that. It's no longer just some
Yeah.
general like, oh, can I get this favor from the company? Can I get that favor for the company? Now it's like certain levels, you get these certain cool things from the company, or you can call on this or whatever. I don't know. I really like
Yeah.
that.
No, totally. I think, whenever you're playing a game, it's always up to the referee's discretion
Sure.
what they're going to use. But it's so nice to have that so specific right off the bat, because if you need the help or if you need that specificity, you can take it. And it's going to
Right.
make your life a lot easier. But then if you also go, nah, I want to go off my own kind of rules, then sure, you can like
Well,
throw it
I
away.
think
But
that's
it's just
what's
nice to have it.
Oh, totally. It's such a great backbone, and they cover everything, and it makes sense. But I think you just said something that always reminds me. We always talk about how one of the cool things about Cyberpunk is right in the rule books. Like no matter which edition you have, there's always parts that are like at the bottom it'll be some the last sentence will be something along the lines of but feel free to add your own, or feel free to do this. Like they're always
Yeah.
so like cool with the GMs, like make your world yours, and like if something isn't working right for you and your players, then fuck it, man, like add a new thing or do this, or
Yeah,
I don't know, it's
absolutely.
just so cool. I love that.
We I think there's a note, because one of our characters is a tech, and with you can specialize now into
Oh, I
kind of
love.
different elements of tech, which
Yeah.
is also very, very cool, and it helps you figure out, yeah, what kind of tech would I be. And it gets into like inventing.
I love it.
And underneath that section it is like, referees beware, or referees or players beware.
Right.
This could break the game.
Exactly. It's so cool. Yeah, like they talk about things could potentially be unbalanced. I think they say the
I
same
know.
thing when it gets into like exotic weapons and other parts. It always, I don't know. It still has that sassy attitude that you love reading in Cyberpunk. Like
Yeah.
they have attitude. Like they still have that sort of. Well, fuck, if you get this low, like, hey, what's the name of your new character? Like that sort of vibe,
Yeah.
Like I just
Start
love
rolling.
that. Yeah, it's just so cool. It just has such attitude. And
Yeah.
and yeah, aside from that, like nomads, I love how, back in the day they were just, to me, like 2020, it was like a nomad was almost felt like you're just a solo that dressed like, Mad Max. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're a
Yeah.
solo that I'm a solo, but I'm more of a loner from the wastelands. But I'm in the city right now, and I'll do some gigs, or like it just always felt
Yeah.
like that. And now, like with Red, after the fourth corporate war and everything that happened, and how transportation went down, communication, nomads are they're the transport system. They're the support system of life, getting things places and doing things. And like I don't know, they took on even more of kind of a noble feeling, and they have like more of an established like role or a position, and then like
Yeah.
all those role ability things that really go with transportation are just so much more detailed now, like vehicle combat and all that stuff. It's just so cool.
Yeah. Like they went from essentially being like outsiders to now kind of backbones or pillars
Yeah,
of these
they
new
could totally.
communities that are trying to rebuild. And
Yeah,
I just think that's so cool in terms of integrating them into, if you have more of a motley crew. Whereas in 2020, I could see people like, if they wanted to, just doing a campaign of nomads,
yeah,
and that would be like so fucking dope. Like that would just be like Mad Max, in all its glory. Maybe you're fighting some other kind of nomad gang or pack, or doing some running for the corpse and stuff. Like I could so visualize seeing that. But having a nomad kind of in your crew in 2020 seems like they would be such an outsider to kind of city life.
right.
Whereas, we don't got no night city now in Red. It's now a big hole in the ground. And
Yeah,
who's responsible for who's most experienced at traversing all this kind of other area, but nomads. And it's really cool how they've just kind of pitched in to help. Yeah, I'm having, I mean, we've all recorded it now, so it's over, but as it's coming out, I love my nomad character so much.
nice.
I think
Yeah,
she's so fun. And I
it's like they can
rolled
be
a
a face now, like with the
yeah.
importance of their role. It's like in a team, I can picture them being more of a face or more of a needed position for traveling and all that. And like you said, because Night City is completely being rebuilt, it's all under construction, it's all new and red.
Yeah.
Life is finally getting back in after the toxic fallout. It's finally, livable, even though it's still there's still toxic rains and wash off systems
Yeah.
entering buildings and just the craziness of the environment. But like I feel like Nomads, I don't want to say stepped up, because it's not like they stepped up or had, but like their position in this world is just so like important now. It just has such a cool feeling to it.
Yeah. I actually rolled because there's different suggestions of what your in your life path, like what your nomad pack is.
Oh, and I
And
love what they
rolled a
did with
traveling.
Life Path.
Yeah, I rolled this traveling circus. Like,
Oh, wow. Nice.
yeah, everyone at Baby Beard was like, Ellen, you picked that on purpose. Like,
Right.
for sure you did. And I was like, no, seriously, guys, I rolled it. I'm not making this up.
No, I love that they did that with Life Paths, that each individual role or whatever can have, a separate life path aside from the general one. And that's one thing everyone always talks about with Cyberpunk, is how extensive the life path stuff is. It's so badass, even in 2020, But I feel like with Red, it even got cooler. Like, they do everything that they did, but then now individual roles actually have their own things that can kind of, like you said earlier, each role has so many subcategories or sub personality or job traits or whatever, that you can get real specific with what type of role you are underneath that role. It's like, it's so cool. And even with like adding in multi-classing and the hit point system and just all these like changes are just, I don't know, it's, to me, it's, they simplified some of the shit that was maybe a bit too crunchy or a bit overwhelming to some, and then they like expanded on stuff where it's really fucking appreciated. Like, I love it.
Yeah, and for me, it really kind of helps me with that acting background, that role playing kind of factor, because you can roll all of these decisions. What's my relationship with my family? What's been the last big impactful moment for me? Even things like fashion and affectations, you roll, and like, because it's so random, it really is an interesting and fun job for you as a player and performer to kind of go, all right, so this person, like, their best relationship is with their, let's say it's like with their father, but then also they had a huge falling out with the family. So like, what does that mean for a character? How does that affect their life? How do you play that? And I just think that really helps that factor in Cyberpunk, where it's like, these are people. Cyberpunks are people, and they're just trying to get by in the world as much as we are. So a lot of their struggles are very, similar to ours, and you can put a lot of empathy in there and really, really role play it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, you can totally bring them to life,
Yeah, it was really hard giving up that giving up the fashion roles to chance, I will say, because
sometimes it can get a little weird.
I'm someone who's very like aesthetic. I always say it's kind of like my my philosophy with not only my half orc, but most things I do in life. It's like, can't do it if you're not cute,
Nice.
Can't fight crime if you're not cute.
Well, and Cyberpunk's big on that. It's all about style.
It's all about style. Yeah, and it's nice when that kind of fits up with your own personal aesthetic. For my 2020 character, Cassie Glass, she's a rocker. She's very chic, very cool, very understated. And so I was really lucky that my roles, it was kind of like lingerie as outerwear. Like, I think her affectation was glasses, like sunglasses and stuff like that, or different eyewear.
Nice.
And like that stuff, I was like, ooh, I can already like see the image of this character. I can already see the costumes and stage wear, but also just personal wear that she would kind of go about in, a lot of mesh, a lot of textures, a lot of kind of see-through things. And then I supplemented that by giving her LED tattoos, so that you would be able to like see her tattoos through her clothing. And like, for me, my favorite thing as an actor is when I try on my costume and like, just as much excitement from picking fashion or rolling fashion in Cyberpunk as well.
Yeah, it's totally bringing it to life. And yeah, honestly, like anytime, I mean, now I GM all the time, but when I would play, that was the one thing I typically wouldn't roll because I would always be like, oh, like I don't want to get a certain
Yeah.
haircut or look or certain thing because like I'm very specific with that, like in the game because it's cyberpunk. Like I love how you can get so detailed in style and look, and I don't know, it comes into play, and I love that.
Mm. I have a question. Like, how do you personally interpret the style? You know, because that's the biggest thing about Cyberpunk. It's style over substance. Is it cool? Because
Right.
that's what gets you the most kind of currency in the Cyberpunk world. Can you do something stylishly and cool and kind of ride your street cred, as it were?
Oh yeah.
So,
No,
like, how do
and
you interpret that when you run
well,
games?
I love doing it in two different ways. Like I think it definitely plays in style and look, and how you are. Obviously, like it comes across in different environments. It could be interpreted or come with repercussions or rewards. But I think it's also heavily into actions. Like every once in a while, I'll call on a player just to make a general cool roll while they're doing an action to be like, well, fuck, you nailed that, man. Tell me like you didn't just run over there. You did like a couple somersaults and did this, and like people are
Yeah,
like, "Oh
you
shit!"
you
And this one chick
slid
took a
in like it's
picture and posted
baseball.
it. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just add all this shit to it. So like, I'll definitely put it in the actions as a cool role because it's part of Cyberpunk, and I love when players do that too. Like, I have a couple players that are really into that. One being my wife, she plays a solo on one of the teams weekly, and then my buddy Mickey, who's also an actor. But when they do certain things, I love when they describe it in detail. Like they don't just, oh, I'm gonna shoot that person. Like they're like, oh, I want to dive over this way and then shoot him sideways, and then if it's a hit or it kills him, I'm always like, and you can describe it, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And they'll totally get into it, and I just love that shit. And I
yeah.
think
I
that's
feel.
what I that's what I consider the whole style part of cyberpunk. It's like the look and the attitude with what you're doing, not just what you're doing.
Yeah, and like the feel of it as well.
Oh yeah.
Phil does like a similar thing where it's kind of like if you really impress him with like a description of something, or the way you phrase something, or just role playing, he'll be like, "That was cool. I'll give it to you." I'm not gonna make
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think in our 2020 campaign, our fixer Junk, played by Sean, he has like a grappling hook kind of thing on his arm, and so I think we have like a meeting with him, and he kind of like at the end he kind of like Batman's his way out of there. Like he just shoots off
Nice.
and grapples his way out of there and just like disappears into the night. And Phil was like, "That's fucking cool." Like I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
make you roll for that because if like it's cool and that's part of the world. Whereas
Hell
if
yeah.
I made you roll for it, you might get a one and like I don't know, your grappling hook like it goes all Inspector Gadget and it like
Yeah.
you just
No,
end
so,
up kind of like swinging back and forth while everyone's just standing there waiting for you, and that's not cool.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
I'll
No,
give it to you
sometimes
based on your strength of play, like
yeah, yeah.
performing.
You got to just give it sometimes when it's a cool move, or a cool
Yeah.
description. And oh, and speaking of, the aspects of being cool in your role playing and stuff, that's another part of what's coming in red that I love is what they're doing with IP points, like or IP improvement points,
Mm.
and how it's kind of like you no longer just gain the points and use them. It's like this whole report card system from the GM. So like whether the campaign's over or still in process determines how the GM kind of uses the report card system. But I love that it's there, that there like it gets into how you role played, how you did this, how you did that, and you can look at the different points that you can reward. I don't know. It's just I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, me too, because it really gives you the sense of longevity of a game, which I mean, we it's a bit different for us because when we do roll to cast seasons, we usually just do a kind of one shot season so we can build a nice thematic arc, so it's more like a season of television or a
Yeah,
movie or something kind of that. We
there's something
have
you can
a
follow and get
narrative
into.
that we want to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, spoilers, no spoilers. Just check out our season 1 listeners,
Yeah.
going mainstream, because we had players die. We had characters in our game bite the dust, and that was it for them. There was no re-rolling
Yeah.
because that character was dead. So the narrative carried on because it was a season. Whereas if you were doing like a long ongoing game similar to how most people do D&D, you know, where it's just kind of ongoing and you meet up every week or weekend or whatever, and you imagine these travelers or adventurers just going around beating the shit out of goblins until
Right.
they just forever. Whereas in Cyberpunk, 2020 or even Red, I'm just like, I don't want to do more than a season because I don't want my sweet baby character to die. I'm emotionally attached. Already so many other characters have died. I don't want to re-roll. But I like that sense in Red that it's for me, the difference between 2020 and Red is that Red is a more hopeful game. Like the corps are, they're back on a leash. The government's not going to let them kind of have full control and just do whatever the hell they want anymore. Night City is gone. And so it's kind of, this moment of, well, what kind of world do we want to shape now? Because actually my input can affect that. Whereas in 2020, you're punks living under the boot of the corporation, and the biggest thing you can do is give a big fuck you to the system. So it's a lot less hopeless, but then you've got such a system of a sense of rebellion, rather, this sense of fuck you. If I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna make a mark. I'm gonna put a little cog in your machine.
Yeah.
And even though it might be insignificant, well, that's what it's all about. It's all about, doing something.
No, exactly. It lays out that, like, since things are, it's a fresh start, you can almost you feel like you could influence a bit more. But for me, the way I'm running it, our two teams, and the way we're diving into Red, there is a Night City. 2045 is after the toxic fallout, and they rebuilt the city, which is leading to that layout of 2077. However, there's a whole string of neocorps. Some of the old corps aren't there, but between the neocorps, the past ones trying to still coexist and come up in the new system, in combination with the old gangs that aren't there, the new gangs that are there, and all that, to me, it's even more dangerous. It's more cutthroat because it's all new and everyone's fighting for a fucking spot at the table, and there's less tables because there's no more communication, there's no more transportation, nothing is governed, the city is still independent. Now Arasaka has a chunk of the beach that they're working towards. It just seems more dangerous, and on top of that, there's this red sky, so you don't get good sun. There's constant rains. It's toxic. Before going into shops and buildings, you're doing a wash off to get the shit off your body. Everyone's pissed off because they're wet and dirty. It just seems more grimy to me, and that's how I'm kind of pushing it. It is a little hopeful, like you can maybe have a little influence because it is a new city in that sense. But to me, I feel it's more dangerous than 2020, and that's how I'm kind of pushing it.
But I mean, I think that kind of goes hand in hand. When there's more hope, there's more fight,
Oh yeah.
Because you're not just fighting to give a little middle finger.
Exactly, and it's not just you. Everybody has that hope and is fighting for it, so.
And you're fighting to keep something. Whereas you have nothing in 2020, you're owned. You're a product, and someone's got a little barcode on you.
And it did feel, and it did feel like you had less influence in 2020, like you said, because of the fact it was like all these corps, everything is established and it's fucking there, and you can't, some of them are immovable forces. Like, you're not gonna change these big corporations or Militech or Arasaka or these huge names. Yet in Red, you can kind of get that feeling like everything's new and like, fuck, maybe I can, like elbow my way over here and make something happen. Like, I don't know, it does feel a little more hopeful in that sense. You're right.
Did you play the apartment in the Jumpstart kit?
No, I don't do too many of the set ones. I love creating and stuff, but I love watching other people do it. I have seen it, on
we did it as a kind of just test run because we wanted to test what the actual mechanics of the game were and just kind of like have a play before we got into the nitty gritty of our own campaign. But when we interviewed Jay from Untitled Chapter, he kind of mentioned that with the apartment, it's such an emblematic thing of Red because it's about community. Like, this corp is trying to essentially your apartment block that you live in is going to be bulldozed by a corporation. And so there's a real kind of sense of this time it's personal. Like
Right.
they're literally trying to get back at your community.
Yep.
And because it's an apartment, you know the people you live with, and you're all trying to get by together. So it gives you so much more of a sense to like why you're fighting for this, because it's not just a corp going for you, it's a corp going for essentially your whole family, and fuck if you're gonna let them take it.
Right.
So it's kind of got that more sense of like, nah, little baby, you know,
Right.
we
Totally.
cut off the head of, we cut off the head of the corp, and now all the little, all the little new heads are starting to sprout, and we're gonna take them on one at a time.
Yep. I love
so that was the
yeah.
kind of feel, that there's a real sense of community in Red, which I really, really love.
Yeah, no, it definitely has that feeling, like, like with everyone trying to come up and find a spot for themselves in this new city, people are grabbing on to the few that they can trust, the few that they might actually know or whatever. Like, I can totally feel that. And what, going over all the different things that we know that have changed with Red from 2020 that we love, and how they went into depth on certain things and all that, what, after going through it, do you want to see in Red that you didn't see? Because, I know the advanced copy, it's just the core rules. There's certain things mentioned in there that, like, go to page XXX and it's not there, that section when they talk about certain things. But so we know it's going to expand on a bunch of things. But even knowing that and knowing what the core rules are, what do you want to see in Red that you didn't see in that? Or is there anything that you thought of that you didn't see that you wanted to see?
I mean, I'm very excited to see, like, new books for Red. Because 2020 has so many,
all the source books.
Yeah, different source books that you can kind of sink your teeth into. I don't know if it's just because it is a new world, but it's kind of like, who's the Johnny Silverhand of Red? Like, who are the big players? Who are those kind of...
Right.
I'd love to kind of know more about that element, just more kind of like day-to-day things. But honestly, I love Red how it is. Like,
I'm with you on that. I think it's all there, but I'm with you. Like, I am, the one thing that I'm excited to see is, like, are they gonna come out with, like, a Night City source book, a Night Market source book that's kind of like the Black Hand, the Morgan Black Hand weapon book sort of equivalent? Is their Chrome Black book gonna be like a compilation of all the other Chromes, translated to work with Red in addition to new shit added to it? And, like, I want more texture to the stories, and, like, what I mean? Like, I want more substance. yeah, more substance,
Like, I'm like, the gameplay's dope. I love that.
Yeah.
Whereas in terms of things I crave, I'm like, I don't know, if I was going into a store and I wanted a snack, what snacks would I have?
Right.
Like, all my interest in role-playing games is usually stuff that helps you role-play. Which, I love that it's also so fresh as well. And so if you know stuff about 2020, you can easily bring that across. And we have little nods in our Red campaign to our Cyberpunk 2020. We have nods in Feed the Beast to going mainstream, like carryover characters and nods to that. So there's a few Easter eggs in there.
Nice.
But I also love that it's so fresh and you can kind of make up shit for Red.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a lot of non-answer. I'm like,
right.
I like them all.
Right. Well,
more stuff would be nice, but also it's fine.
Yeah, but I totally get it. Like, I totally agree and get it. Like, it's awesome what it is, but it's just like, it's so awesome. Like, we want more of it. Like, just more lore, more details, more substance to it, so we can get our hands on it and use it and manipulate it into our games and shit. Like, it's just that cool to us, So I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, just like stuff for people to get jazzed on, because the thing I'm loving is, like, I had no idea how fervent fans of Cyberpunk are until we really dipped our toes into 2020. Like, as soon as the 2077 trailer came out, people were already cosplaying as, like, characters from the trailer, and you're just like, fuck, man, that's so much passion and excitement and just raw energy that people are kind of catching the wave on. So it's kind of like, it's all that, like you said, what's the texture of the world? Like, if I walk down this street, who am I going to see? What buildings am I going to see?
Yeah.
What is around me? Like, people love those things.
Yeah, and you just mentioned the 2077 game. I wanted to ask you what you think about the concurrent creation of Red and the 2077 game,
I
and
mean,
what it's doing
yeah. I'm
as far as
I'm
bringing attention to the tabletop and like, the video game. Like, how do you feel about all that stuff?
well, that's one thing. I do some photo shoots or cosplays for
Oh, I love it too, by the
our
way. Yeah, I
yeah,
see. I
thank
see you
you for
posting those, and you said you did it for the Baby Beard Media. Isn't that what it is? Your company?
yeah, that's our company, and so I'm kind of our insta bitch.
Hell yeah.
Because like I said, I'm all about the aesthetic, and one of the ideas I had was like, I want to do some like cosplays or in character stuff for promotional material because I love all of our material, but I'm an actor, so it's just like, oh man, I wish as well like we could do a movie of our cyberpunk
Yeah, it
campaign,
sucks that
like
you
people could
live way over there. Because if you were in LA, we could play around with shit like that. Because I don't know if you've
yeah.
seen, but I'm a filmmaker. I produce and direct and create. I have films out in series, that I do in different genres. And
Oh,
yeah, and
awesome.
one of the things I'm working on, well, one of the things I'm working on now, maybe you could help with because it's something that you could do remotely. Is
Oh,
we're doing I can't get into too much detail about it, but kind of like a cyberpunk cartoon sort of thing. Not to be confused with the Cyberpunk Edge Runner animated Netflix thing that's coming out in a couple years. It's not
yeah.
stepping on toes like that. It's completely different, but I can't go into details. But maybe we can talk about you dropping a voice on a character or something. That'd be fun.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's like my dream, you know. This is what kind of inspired Roll to Cast and Baby Beard Media. Like, it's so much fun, and we do a lot of character voices. My character in Red, Sprocket, she has Russian accent, which is very fun to do and play
Nice.
with. Um, and so it's like, oh, I wish people could see us doing all these role playing things, and I wish we could really be inside of the world. And so yeah, I started doing some photo shoots with a friend of mine, Jamie, and where was I going with this? Fuck.
And those photos look
uh,
awesome.
they look awesome. They look super dope. And I'm sure I had a point to this apart from talking about how dope I look. Um,
Oh, when it
yeah.
comes
Oh
into
no, I think
acting
I
and all
think we're
that
talking
stuff.
about 2077.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's where we started. You're right.
Yeah, shit, man.
How
I'm
you
so
feel?
bad at tangents.
I am too.
Um, yeah,
Especially with
but
Cyberpunk, I'm
it's like
so passionate about it. I could just go on a tangent about it and just forget where I was because
I know,
I can
I
just dive
know.
in.
But it's like it's that thing of like people are so excited and doing stuff for that, and like that led me to kind of the cosplay thing because so many people are hopping on it, and there's so many like really cool facets of cyberpunk that I think you can really explore and sink your teeth into. And that when I do those shoots, my friend Jamie, who's taking the photos, he's always like, the last one we did was a media role. And he was like, okay, so tell me how you play as or what's a media in Cyberpunk? What does that mean? And
Yeah.
so when I tell him these things, I'm always like, I hope that with the game, it's going to spark a flame and like really ignite passions for people to go discover the role playing
Oh,
game.
it will. It definitely will.
Yeah.
It's already been doing it. I know in certain groups online, sometimes I'll see people commenting or talking about it. One of our friends, Phil, who's co-hosted with me on some of the episodes of our podcast, he even brought it up as well. But seeing younger generations comment on different posts about Red and other things like, oh shit, this is a tabletop game too. I'm going to check that out. And
Yeah.
I really do believe, like, one of the things that's making the video game so hype and so popular is the fact that it's an open world style game. So
Mm.
it doesn't just have that cyberpunk genre vibe to it, but it's the details within that you can dive in and feel like you're living a real life somewhere else or whatever. It's like a role playing. It's an RPG video game, But it's the
Yeah.
open world aspect. Same thing with like GTA and other games, that have that. They just get so popular in that genre, and I feel like, man, once the people that get in the video game, like, not all of them, because not everybody wants to translate to tabletop, but the ones that
Yeah.
really love open world, some of them have got to realize, like, shit, the role playing game, the tabletop version is an ultimate open world. Like, there's no limitations. Like, even in a video game, there's some, because it's a
Yeah.
program. But like
Exactly.
role playing tabletop, you can just, whatever your mind creates or the GM can think of, you can bring to life and make it something.
Yeah, because like looking at the gameplay and all the trailers that are coming out for 2077, like it all just looks amazing, and having visuals always ups the ante for me because I'm such a tactile and visual person.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I've kind of been looking at, you know, when you play as V, the player character in 2077. I think it's 3 classes you can play as, which is like, what, it's Corp.
Yeah, Street Kid and...
Yeah, Street Kid, a Corp, and... Shit, I can't remember
or
the
Nomad,
other one.
right?
Yeah, and a Nomad. Like, that's your kind of like life path.
Yeah.
That you
but that
kind
could change
of,
by the time it comes out. That could change too. Who knows? But I know what you're talking about. That's what we've seen anyway so far.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like, oh, and you know, as great a job CD Projekt Red, it's like they can't do everything. They can't.
Right.
Otherwise, that would be a clusterfuck, and they'd never get a game made.
You couldn't create a computer big enough to handle it. You know what I mean? Like it would just be too much. You know, if they really dove into it the way they want to, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'm sure like the passion for Cyberpunk will kind of, it'll feed into each other. You know, people who love what 2077 allows them to do will hopefully think, what else can I do? You know, more. I want more content.
Well, and also look at like Dungeons and Dragons as an example. You know, they came out with the 5th edition and they streamlined all the rules, kind of like what Red's doing. They made it easier for people to get along with, but they expanded on some things that were cool to people, and they diversified it within, you know, the game itself, the characters, the art. They just upgraded everything, but streamlined it, most importantly. So then more people could get along with it. It got more popular that way. And then all of a sudden, like, some famous people are streaming gameplay. It makes an appearance on Stranger Things, on South Park, and random movies and other series, you know, and then all of a sudden, boom, it is fucking huge, and everyone knows about it. Everyone has played it. You know, it's everywhere. Like you said with your podcast, it was like you didn't want to do another D&D one because it's fucking everywhere. It is so big. And I do believe Cyberpunk is heading that way with the hype of the video game and the new Red coming out streamlined. I think, you know, maybe not to the extreme of D&D, but I really think it's going to come close, if not the same, but get that popular because of it being easy to get along with, because of the hype of the video game, and then before you know it, some celebrity is going to play it, even which they've already been doing. You've seen like Luke Gygax, you've seen Matthew Lillard play live with Mike Pondsmith GMing. It's going to get more and more, and then all of a sudden it's going to appear in a movie, on a TV show. That cartoon's going to come out on Netflix in a couple years, and like I see it blowing up the same way that D&D did with 5th edition, or at least close to, which would be awesome, because think of all the new players, and it's just going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think accessibilities for particularly role-playing games is a big thing, or it's a big hurdle for kind of new people to overcome, because like that's why I didn't do D&D for ages, because I'm like, I suck at math. Also, you need someone who's really up and around it to run it. And it's a big thing. If you don't know of a campaign that's already going, or if you don't know someone who's asking people to join their campaign, it can be a big thing for someone who's never done it before, because then you need to find someone who knows the system really well, in depth enough that they can, you know, GM comfortably.
Yeah.
And then you either got to bend their arm somehow or ask them to run a campaign so you can play the game. And there's like that's a big accessibility thing right there. And so I think just having something that's you know, I think accessibility of role-playing games is something that you know, stops a lot of people who'd really enjoy it. I'm running a Kids on Bikes campaign at the moment for a potential new season of Roll to Cast, because I was like, okay, I've done a lot of role-playing now I have to run a game, and I want a system that's going to be super easy for me to be able to comfortably and confidently run a game. And so I'm doing like a test run with some friends of mine from acting school, and 2 of them are, you know, really experienced role players, and one has never seen a role-playing game in her life. You know, she's never touched one. But I was like, you're so good at performing. You know, I've done a clown show with her, and I was like, I know that you can. Yeah, I run a theater company, and I did a fringe show this year, and so I had a whole kind of group of performers that we all made the show together, and she was one of them.
So and it's making more and more sense that your Nomad was from the circus.
I know.
You have a real life circus background. It's crazy.
That's what I meant. Everyone from Baby Beard was like, Ellen, okay, we know that you for sure picked that. And I'm like, I'm serious. I didn't.
Funny.
Why won't anyone believe me? They're like, you with your fucking Harley Quinn fucking big sledgehammer. And I'm like, okay, I did pick the sledgehammer, but that's my weapon. I'm allowed to pick that. I don't have to roll for it. But yeah, like, but I was like, I know that you'd be great at role playing because obviously you're an actor.
Yeah.
And you have a huge skill set in creating art as well, not just not just showing up as an actor and reading your lines. I've been in stuff where we've made stuff together, and so I'm like, come be in my game. And she's so great. Like, I think you don't need to be so good at a system as long as you kind of go by genre and by
and like you said,
role playing.
Yeah, creative thinkers. Like I love all of my players are like that, but like I've seen other players that aren't so much. They just do the rules. They kind of play the character a little bit. But I love when, like, I don't know, they dive into the character and like how the character would think and act, and they try to really role play it properly, and then they get creative about the way that they do things within the game. It's not just cut and dry based on the rules available. And I love that because it makes the story go beyond what I would plan. And even if I dive in and I think, as a GM, like, oh, this is a cool twisted story with like this hidden meaning, and like it's all deep, and like obviously you think you came up with this genius thing or whatever, and then like you drop it in and the players will just do something from left field, and you're like, okay, well, that just got rid of this whole aspect that I thought we were going to do. Now we're doing this. And like, but I love it when that happens because it naturally creates, I don't know, this cool story that just naturally you collaborate with your players on, and it's never like you don't have to be a role-playing person. You just got to be a fun, creative mind, like if you can think of creative things and have fun with it, and it's usually actors are great at that.
Yeah, you just have to be generous. We say this all the time in acting and theater, is like, you have to be generous to your fellow actor. If you're not giving them anything, they're not going to give you anything.
Right.
But if you're all working collectively for the good of the art or the product you're making, then it's like a team, so you can kind of, if you're struggling, your teammate's going to help you out.
Yeah, you feed off of each other's energy.
Yeah, there's been some really great moments in our Kids on Bikes test where one of my players has been like, oh, is it related to this? And like nowhere in my mind was it, but I'm like, yes, that's pretty fucking good. Yes, it is now.
Exactly.
Now I've got to scramble to think of it. And like,
I love when that happens.
Yeah, it's so good. And like, that's not to say everything needs to be like, oh, so serious. You can still have fun because there's a joke that it's like, I can only do one German accent, which is, do you know Werner Herzog?
No.
He's a documentary maker, and he's very serious.
Oh, yeah.
In his tone. But he is also enjoying the funny parts of life, but he always sounds so serious that when he's describing things like WrestleMania or Keeping Up with the Kardashians, that is quite humorous in tone. And I have a character who's German in my Kids on Bikes thing.
Nice.
And she's meant to be like a young teacher who, her family immigrated to Australia, maybe like 10 years ago. And so, but that's the only German accent I can do. So it's just like, hello, yes, I am 20 years old. I am a young woman. Yes, that is correct. And it came time in the campaign where they like knock on her family home and her father opens the door and they were like, hello, is this character here? And I'm like, yes, hello, yes, this is her father. Yes, I will just daughter.
What you should have done is all of us. What you should have done is all of a sudden just talked in like an American accent, be like, yeah, I don't know why she does that. I don't know. She was raised in the States. I don't get why she, whatever.
Yeah. Instead, I just treated it as it's like, no, that is the Mueller family accent. They all sound exactly the same.
It's the family voice.
And so the joke is like, if you called the phone, you'd be like, hello. It's like, oh, is that Leah? No. Is it Hans? No.
That's awesome.
Is it Werner? Yes, this is Werner. It's just so silly. But yeah, it's that kind of
I love that you
collaborative
do accents
storytelling.
though. I love when players do accents or they get into it, and GMs too. Like I try to slide them in here and there with NPCs or characters, you know. But I love watching or listening to gameplay when it gets like that. It just adds to it being immersive, you know. It's fun, but it also to me makes it feel more real. It just gives, like we said earlier, like a little more texture to the story or the
Yeah,
game.
and the great thing about Cyberpunk as well is that the world is so multicultural because it's like our world,
Yeah.
and so many people coming and going from things as well. Like for our podcast, having different accents can really. This is just me personally. I know as well. Sean from Baby Beard, he he says for each character he always approaches it from the voice first. Like he has he can hear their voice in his mind, and so
Awesome.
he kind of like builds the character around that. So for Cyberpunk 2020, he's a kind of like gruff, gruff kind of like speaks, I'll get the thing, and yeah, I'll talk to my people, and he kind of like is very kind
Yeah.
of
Real
short and
abrasive.
detached and gruff kind of
Yeah.
thing. And in Red, he plays a kind of more, not smarmy, but he's a techie who is kind of much more attracted to machines than he is people. He finds machines so much easier to get along with, and he's
Yeah.
really fascinated by them. And he's a bit of a smart ass, so he's kind of that fast talking, fast, blah, 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 kind of thinks he knows everything in the room, very snarky, very smug.
Yeah, I love that.
Kind of thing. And so that really helps him differentiate his characters, and he builds them up from there. For me, it's just it helps me differentiate what is the character and what is me speaking, because for Sprocket, she is very excited and fast talking, and she is so cute and funny and not very cool. But when
Yeah.
I take moments away from that and I'm speaking as the player Ellen, it hopefully helps the listeners differentiate, when Sprocket goes, oh shit, to
Yeah,
when me, the player,
totally.
goes, oh shit.
Right, right. That's a good
What's
point.
affecting the character and what's affecting the player. And sometimes you have it happening both ways, where something shocking will happen, and all of us will go
Yeah, yeah.
and you don't necessarily know what's the character and what's the player anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because I've never really thought of that point of view or that angle of that is, the viewer, the listener, just the fan or somebody, that just helps them differentiate, like you said, character from player. And I never really thought about that, but it's so true.
Yeah,
That's
because we
cool.
don't have the benefit of them being able to
Yeah.
see our faces. But then it's also it is a pro in that you might be able to do many characters, or if you're a GM, you can really kind of. I know, Sean, we're going to be doing a season of Pulp Cthulhu.
Oh.
Which we're halfway through recording, and so that's a kind of big adventurer, almost like the Mummy meets Indiana Jones kind of thing. And he said there's not a NPC that he would never not voice. So like anytime we're speaking to an NPC, he's like, I gotta do a voice, I gotta do a
Nice.
character.
Hell yeah.
And we've got a pretty multicultural background in that one as well. Like there's a New York gangster, Italian. There's a oh shit, is he? No, he's Norwegian. There's a Norwegian inventor. There's a French bon vivant. There's an Irish priest. So like,
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
so like, anytime our characters interact with someone, Sean's having to go, yes, that is very good, or yeah, Mina, yeah, get the boss on him,
I
or
love that. I love that so much, though. It gives so much style and feeling to it, And
yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
on a for a GM, it also allows, like, for instance, I like when, say, you give a certain voice to a character, like for an example, like a villain, and maybe they send some, like, you don't know it's a villain. Maybe they send you on a job, and you do that voice, and they hire you, and they do it over the phone anonymously. You do the job, whatever. Then later something bad happens, or then you realize it's a villain because. That dark figure enters the room or calls you and says, yeah, did you, laughs at you about it. And, you recognize that voice. So
Yeah.
you can almost play with that too, just as you would a visual in that sense. Like it can be a complete component to the story where all of a sudden it's a mic drop, so to speak. Like all of a sudden, like, and the villain walks in, and when he starts speaking, you recognize the voice, and then the GM hits that voice, and the player's like, "Oh shit, that's the
Oh
same voice
shit.
he was
Yeah.
doing that hired me, 2 games ago, or last session." Like I don't know, it can be an actual component of the game too, which is really cool. But I love that
Oh,
your GM gets all into
absolutely.
that. That's so cool.
Yeah. There's like a oh shit. I did know what I was gonna say. Damn it.
Sorry. See, I go on tangents. I'll ramble about this shit, and then we'll forget what we're talking about.
Oh no, me the fuck too. Yeah. Oh, that was one thing. Yeah, that Phil for Feed the Beast had real fun with is he asked us what our agents would sound like. Which I
Nice.
think in and of itself, I think agents are a really cool thing of cyberpunk that I'd love there to be. I'm very curious to see how they portray it in 2077. It's probably just going to be like that's how you access stuff for that's how you see what quest or
Right.
mission you're meant to be doing. So I'm sure it's just going to be like an overlay like that, but the idea of agents is a version of our smartphone, something
Right.
that we're a bit familiar with, but they're also able to do much more because it's cyberpunk and they're higher tech.
It'll be
But
a flip
Phil,
phone, just like in 2020. They were like so futuristic with that flip phone.
so futuristic. Oh my god, it's got a keyboard, you guys.
Right.
It's got a keypad. Yeah, but he asked us what our agents would sound like because it's our own personal computer. So, we all have Siri. And so his idea was that it's going to be kind of personalized to each individual.
That's cool.
And so he really had a lot of fun doing that. So with Wax, our netrunner, he's a ladies' man. Well, he's kind of an everyone's man. Got a lot of he's got a long line of burned relationships in his past.
Oh,
And so his agent was kind of like very flirtatious, very hey Wax, blah blah
nice.
blah. You've got this on today. And then mine, because I figured Sprocket would be missing home, because my whole idea with her was that she's a nomad, and that she's a teenager and she's kind of doing like a Rumspringer. Is it Rumspringer? Rumspringer, whatever.
Yeah.
What the Amish people do, where it's kind of like when you're 16 or 17, you get to go out into the real
Real world,
community,
yeah.
yeah, and figure out if that's the life you want to lead. And so I figured she's kind of doing something like that, where she's set up shop in this little new community, and she wants to taste the rest of the world essentially.
Nice.
And so, but I figured she'd probably be a bit homesick. And so when she wakes up in the morning, her agent goes, "Good morning, Sprocket. What are we going to do today?"
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And so it reminds her of her dad. And our techie, he has a huge relationship with his agent because he's got an internal one. So it's kind of like the little voice in his head. And he wants her to, he keeps pushing her AI system, what kind of music would you like? And the AI has to go, I don't know. I've never thought about liking something or music or, what tastes I would have. And so they kind of have like a My Girl Friday back and
Yeah,
forth
that's
between the
awesome.
two of them.
Yeah, I love that he
Which,
came up with that little touch of flavor. Like I like when GMs will do things like I've done it at the beginning of games. I've seen a buddy of mine that run games do it, but like before we get started, okay, what's your character's favorite drink? Or I started one, I was
yeah,
like, okay, you guys just woke up from the previous night. What did your character dream about last night? And I let each one
mm,
kind of describe the dream that they had last night. But I love that too. Like, what's your agent ringer sound like, or what's your agent response, or yeah, like I love little touches of flavor like that. That's so cool.
oh, me too. And I think in 2020 we delve a bit more into that because our characters are less cohesive. They're not a family, they're kind of people all picked to do this one kind of heist job. So they're not friends, they're working together, but it's not like they'd go out on a limb for each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so in between preparing for this big heist, we've also got day-to-day things to do. So it's kind of like questions like even like what time would you wake up, or
Yeah.
Where do you live? What's your house look like? If
Oh yeah.
you know, what's your bed like?
That's what I
And
love
so
about
in
session
between,
zeros too. Like that's what we did with ours, established all this. But go on, what you're saying.
oh yeah, well, one of the big things and one of my favorite things about going mainstream our 2020 season is that my character's a rocker. She's got to do her job, you know? So she's got to prepare for a gig that she's got midway in that week. And for me, that meant just because I really get into the role playing of it and I wanted to like really explore that idea of being a rocker or a person of artistic influence in cyberpunk. And so I was literally writing song lyrics. So like when Phil asks me, you know, what's Cassie doing when she's writing song lyrics, I kind of have an idea of like, so she's writing this song and it's going to be like this, and the breakdowns, you know, it's kind of like a half electro, half indie pop
Nice.
ballad kind of thing. And so it just feeds him more texture, more flavor. And the best thing was we have original music made for our seasons by our good friend Paul Goodman. And he and I collaborated on two diegetic cyberpunk songs
Hell
from my
yeah.
character. And that's just like been the biggest highlight for me. It's like,
Yeah, that's so
you
cool.
know, like this character's a rocker. She's got to sing. She's got to perform. Otherwise, her life is kind of meaningless. Like
Right.
that's what makes her her. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was really
No,
cool to
and that
like
totally
make
brings it to
songs.
life, by to actually
Yeah.
make actual songs, like not just role
Oh
play it or
yeah.
talk about it, but like, oh, let me hit play on what we created. That's so cool.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It was like a big ambitious task, but like when I go back and listen to the episode where she, you know, played her gig, and I get to hear the song that she's actually singing, I'm just like, oh, it just gives
Hell
me
yeah.
chills.
So you a song that you actually sang on too. Then you're saying,
Yeah,
how did I miss
yeah.
that?
Well, so while we were doing the playthrough, Phil would be asking questions about like what's Cassie's music sound like? What are the things? And like I would actually be writing lyrics as we were kind of talking. I'd be like, "Oh, she's writing this song about how she feels like in this world, you know, she's just
Yeah,
spare
yeah.
parts."
No, I'm gonna have to go back and
And
rewatch and re-listen now or whatever. I need to
yeah.
I need to check that out, or you need to at least send me the songs. Because I
Oh
love that
yeah, for
shit too.
sure.
I was well, still a musician, but I was a touring musician for a long time, like late '90s, early 2000s, and a bunch of different projects and stuff. So I have a good passion for music as well. But I'd love to hear that. That's so
Oh,
cool. And I think I remember
awesome.
seeing a clip on your Instagram or something of you in a vocal booth or something. I vaguely remember seeing
Mm.
that, or in your stories or something at one point, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
think we have a
it's
video
coming back to
somewhere on
me.
our Insta of me singing or recording a portion of that song.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then after we finished recording the actual gameplay, then comes the editing, then comes the composing, and I kind of asked our composer Paul Goodman. I was like, what if I've got some lyrics here? What if we made a song out of it and we put it in the fucking, you know, what if we put it in the fucking show as a diegetic piece? Because there's a bit where she performs. So, you know, it would
Yeah.
be great to then edit in that actual track. And he was like, you know, I'm up for anything. And so I
Yeah, that's so
basically
cool.
wrote the lyrics and sang him a kind of melody line and then sent that through to him as an MP3. And then he had a listen and then he basically composed around it.
Oh,
Like he
that's
made a kind of
badass.
backing around it. Then he sent the backing to me. And then it was my job to kind of, with the new improved backing, sing over the top.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
he
he kind
didn't
of
make it fucking easy.
yeah, yeah. He kind of reverse engineered that shit. That's cool. Like you came up
Yeah.
with the melody and hook or whatever that then he could create the song for you then to do it too. Like that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's
He's a
awesome.
goddamn genius. But like I said, he never makes it fucking easy for me. Because I'm always like, you know, this is gonna be straight rock. It's gonna be like 4/4. You know, I sing a melody that in my head is pretty much on the beat. And
Yeah.
he just goes like old jazz, baby. Like he wants
Oh.
syncopation. He wants off the beat. He
Yeah,
wants
yeah.
weird
He wants
staccato
like a
rhythms.
a
And I'm
six,
like,
7 time signature and shit. You're just like, wait, where am
I
I?
know. And I'm like, you're writing checks that my voice can't cash, man.
That's funny.
But for me, that was a big part of the role play element, and also like, you get to play as a rocker in Cyberpunk. That's fucking dope. Like,
Yeah.
you get to see how, because you have bards in D&D,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
but
love the fact
it's
that like rockers, just like execs, like the influence that they can have, even though completely different in the way that the role ability works. But like we discussed earlier, it's got a cool element. Well, I mean, each role has its own cool element now, especially with the subcategory role abilities and what they've added in Red. But rocker boys and execs to me, they're I can tell that they had to balance it in the way that they did in the rules because it's almost on the verge of unbalancing things or giving them too much power or something. You know what I mean? Like a little bit
yeah,
further and it could have been too much, but it's just, I don't know, they're really cool roles because of that. And Rocker Boy has just that, I don't know, that coolness to it. And then fitting within Cyberpunk, being punk and like the whole style over everything, like a
yeah.
Rocker Boy can kind of really role play on that angle really well if done right. It's so cool.
Like for me, it's just those little touches that I can believe how an artist kind of sees the world and goes, fuck this, we can do better, or
Oh yeah.
fuck you, you're fucking up the world, and uses that to fuel their art, to give themselves a purpose in life. Bards in D&D have magic and shit. It's not a one-to-one parallel of like
Right.
me empathizing with bards, whereas in Cyberpunk 2020 and Red and hopefully 2077, I'm like, I know how that works.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about all of the roles. It's like I understand.
Oh yeah.
I mean, maybe less so for solos because I
Like
don't know what it's like to go around,
I was gonna say, what, you haven't killed anybody?
breaking people's
Yeah,
femurs.
yeah. No, but I know what you mean. At least like, and especially with Red, how they dove in depth. It's like it's so you can, if not relate to it, you just get more detailed info about it to where you can understand it more. And if you don't relate, you can at least play it better because it just gives it more depth with what they did in Red. I just love it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like a person.
exactly, totally. And
Yeah,
you mentioning the 2077. I want to bring it back to one thing that we were talking about a while ago, which was how the video game obviously sheds light to a whole new genre of fan base, and it can pull more players and GMs into the tabletop when they realize it's actually there and it's more of an open world. And I can see it, making it more popular. And we kind of talked about that, but the other part of that is, how do you feel about like tabletop simulators and digital board games and like sites like Roll20 too? Roll20 that were, what do you think about the impact of that on the RPG community and its future?
Well, so the D&D campaign that I'm in at the moment, when we started, we were in the midst of lockdown. I'm very fortunate that I live in Adelaide, South Australia, so we have been able to relax a lot of those lockdowns. We're very fortunate that way. But when we started out, we were right in the middle of it,
Yeah.
and so we utilized Roll20 as a kind of way to keep it going. And as buggy as just doing things online or not in person is, I think it's much cooler to be able to still do it.
Then not at all.
And yeah, and also the thing about doing it in Roll20, I was like, these are just my mates from Adelaide. I've got so many friends from overseas, and even like other podcasters that we collaborate with, who live in Melbourne or England and stuff like that. And I've got so many mates who don't like necessarily live in the same place I do, that
Yeah.
I was like, this is a way to bring people together, and sure, it might be a bit buggy and you might have to like, use your own phone data for it to for the connection to keep. But like, fuck, it opens the door for much more community
Oh
for,
yeah.
your friend who lives overseas, who you're like, oh man, I wish they lived here so we could do X. It's like, no, you can still do X.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a positive thing for role playing. And like I said, I hope it eases that transition for accessibility for a lot of people, because it's not just a thing of like, you need to find people in your area now to, who knows how to
Right.
play a game. You could go online onto a forum or wherever, and you can go, hey, is anyone playing this? I'd love to be in, and we can do it over Zoom or, Roll20 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's how
I
that's
like
how I've been.
Roll20.
I was gonna
Sorry,
say
you
that's
go.
how it was in my games too. Like I play with, like I mentioned before, my wife plays on one of the teams. I have my buddy Mickey and his girl Heather. They play on one of the other teams, and I know them from filmmaking and things we've done in LA over the years. But then I've also met new friends like my buddy Eric and Daniel, and like we've and Alex. Like I've met people because of posting online. Like, hey, who wants to play? We're doing it on Roll20, and I don't think I would have done that or gotten into that if it wasn't for the quarantine. Because prior to that, I was playing tabletop D&D, and we started playing Cyberpunk, and then everything happened, and we just couldn't play anymore. We weren't getting together. And then when I started looking at it, I was like, oh, let me try to do this, And I got into Roll20. I was like, holy shit, okay, now I'm streaming 2 games a week, and
Yeah.
I'm playing on somebody else's game, and it's like, I don't know. I think it really not only allowed everyone to continue playing, gave another option during this fucked up quarantine time, pandemic stuff, but I think, like you said, it also kind of allows new players to get introduced to it because they're no longer just looking in their local area and saying, fuck, I don't know anybody that plays Cyberpunk. They can get on
Yeah.
there and find plenty of people all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, like, the only bad thing about Roll20 for me was just like my internet was shit at the time. Like,
Uh,
I don't know
it can
if
be
you
rough.
know
It's a
this
new
about.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this about Australian internet, but it's shite. Like, um, I think Americans who come here are like, what the fuck? Are you just like, you
I didn't
running on
know. I
like
didn't know that.
copper pipes or shit? And yes, we are.
You
Um,
type in an email and it comes out the back end in the form of a smoke signal. It's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy. It makes no
yeah. What
sense.
we do is we put an email in a kangaroo's pouch,
Oh
and
Jesus.
and then they boing it over to our mate. Um, but like we got better internet halfway through.
Nice.
But I think the thing is, like, online stuff will always be a little bit buggy. You just have to
Sure.
have the patience, and
Yeah.
then
And I think
fuck
like you
yeah,
said,
you
it's
can play
better
with
to
your mates.
yeah, and like you said, it's better to do that than to not play at all. Like if you can't
Mm,
play or you're in a place you can't find any players or GMs, it's like fuck, like your only option is hop on one of these sites and you'll find people, or get in one of the groups online and then you'll find people and hop on one of the sites to facilitate the gameplay. But at least
yeah.
it's there. And that's not to say I don't love the tabletop. Like I still want to play in person. There's something so fun, getting together with friends and chilling, having
Mm-hmm.
some food and playing and talking, and it's just
Yeah.
fun. And then especially and I wanted to bring this up, is the Monster Club minis. You see them coming out with the actual cyberpunk
Oh, yeah.
miniatures, and that's so I've never really heavily been into miniatures, even with D&D. Like they're cool, and I'll play like if my GM has them, which I
Mm.
appreciate, and it's cool. But I've never personally been into it till I've been seeing these Monster Club minis, and I'm like, oh man, the cyberpunk ones look so badass.
I know, they're so cool looking. Like, we use minis in our D&D thing, but mainly because it's such a combat game. So if you don't know where you are in
Yeah.
relation to who you're fighting, it can get real clusterfucky really quickly. Which is also the benefit of Roll20, is that you can move characters around on a map.
Oh yeah.
But like we don't like when we play our D&D, it's usually like I started bringing in figurines because it was just too much for us to like put pistachio shells wherever
Yeah,
our
yeah,
characters
yeah.
were meant to be. But even then, I only have like one proper D&D minifig, which was given to me as a birthday present, and it's a half-orc warrior.
Nice.
But like all my other, like, I just brought in some little mini toys that I had. So there's heaps of like little Star Wars figurines, and so there's always like a fight over like, no, our paladin is R2D2, guys. Come
Right,
on, he dibsed it. Like,
That's funny.
just like weird shit like that, where you're like, and yeah, Charmander is
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
is
Okay,
this
so
goblin that we're attacking.
the thimble from Monopoly is, you're like, no, I don't want to be the shoe, but
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think
that's another
those
cool.
minifigs for Cyberpunk look dope, and I hope that'll get people more into the like the role playing element
Exactly.
of like they look so stylish and cool, and that's half of the game right
Exactly.
there.
Oh, totally. And collectible and all that stuff. Like there's people that love miniatures, like just like people that collect dice and shit,
Mm.
But that's another cool thing about Roll 20 too is going that digital route. Um, the options, like you can load in all tokens and JPEGs, and like
Yep.
you can put in endless amounts of NPCs and images that you can bring up to show the players and the GM can use, and that's kind of cool too. Because playing in person, you might not have that many miniatures or that many things to show to as an example of that NPC or thing going on. So that's
Yeah,
kind of cool
totally.
too. Yeah.
And you can always and like, you know, uh, uh, all those funny little humorous moments can still come when you're playing online because so we're descending into Avernus in D&D, which is like hell.
Yeah.
Um and and so we put the map up on a Roll 20, and one of our players like basically took the text that says Avernus and replaced it with Perth, which I don't know if you know, but it's a Western Australian town um that we were
Oh,
just
nice.
dunking on for no reason. And so
Oh,
like
okay.
he kept changing all of the maps in there to just be like,
That's funny.
cities or towns in Australia that we just wanted to dunk on.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like what people do about Florida here in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's the thing. I don't even know much about America, but I'm like, I know you guys hate New Jersey.
Yeah, that too. Yep. It's so funny.
Couldn't tell you why, but I know you fucking hate them.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it's
Oh
true.
man. But no, but yeah, I think we really touched base on everything Cyberpunk and then some. I think to sum up everything here, we're just can't wait for Red to officially come out and have all the source books and all the expansions and all the details released. And it'll be nice for all of us that have advanced copies too to have that many more players and GMs and things going on and be able to talk about the details with people. And it sounds like
Oh, for
that's
sure.
it sounds like that's right around the corner too. I saw a post today in the Cyberpunk Uncensored group on Facebook of the video game date and the Red official date coming out or something.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say it because I'm not even sure, but it's still looking like
No.
end of summer is looking good for Red. But who knows? Everything can change. I think they're basing it all on making sure the lore and the things line up with what 2077 is going to say because it has to connect. The storylines
Yeah.
and stuff. And I respect that. I'm not one of those people that's like, hurry up, put out Red, hurry up, put out the video game. Like,
Oh
I don't
no.
shit. Like, take
Like,
your time, make that shit
I'm
amazing.
so excited for when it does come out,
Yeah,
but it's like, it's like a stew. You gotta wait until it's
exactly.
fully cooked. You don't want it to be under seasoned or
Right.
it'll come out when it's ready to come out. So I think people just have to be patient. And you know what? Like that's a big, I think, testament to a lot of the cyberpunk community that I personally have been seeing is that people are just like they're really excited, but they're not being dicks about having to wait.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
you
Every
know,
once in
which
a while, I'll see somebody kind of like troll a post on the Cyberpunk 2077 page or the Red, the Artalsorian. Like every once in a while, I'll see
yeah,
like one person like, "Oh, why are you even putting this news? I just care when is it coming out or what? Oh, let me guess, like another delay." And like anytime I see somebody do that, they'll get like attacked by the community. That's just like, "What the fuck
yeah,
is your problem, dude? Like, then don't buy the game. Like nobody cares about what you think. Like everybody just wants it to be as good as it can be, and we're waiting for the company to do what they got to do, and then it'll be out, and everyone will love it. Like." It's I
yeah.
don't know. I love that aspect
It's
of the
not like we're in
community.
the middle of a pandemic or a revolution here.
Right.
So just shut the fuck up and
Right.
wait your turn.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they're like, they're smaller companies as well. Like, Artel Zorian is kind of like a mom and pop kind of
Yeah.
thing where it's like it's a little family, and I have no idea how they're able to do the work on the scale that they do.
Oh, I know.
And similar thing, like CD Projekt Red, like sure, Cyberpunk 2077 is like a AAA game, but they're not a huge
Right.
company.
No, exactly.
Um, so it's just like, shut up, dudes. Like,
No, and I think that's what I love
you'll
about
get it when you
Artalsorian
get
is
it.
the part I love about them so much is the fact that it's like, Mike and his wife and his son and like it is a family
I
business,
know.
with like a few other employees and it's like I don't know, it just has that feeling where like they're doing it just like, other bigger companies or whatever, and I don't want to name names on different ones, but I feel like they're doing it, but with that sort of feeling like they care. Like it just has more of a feeling that they care. And that's not to say others don't in other companies and things like that, but there's just something to the fact that it is their entire family. Like just a slight quick example, like when I used to tour and stuff, my wife, Valerie, she would go hit the road with us. She would, run the merch table. Then when we ran different shops here in LA and my different businesses, she would help with that. When we do filmmaking, she's acted in them. She's working on set on other projects I'm hired to work on. And like, we are a team. And I always feel like when you see family teams, it's not easy to work with and love your family and friends and to be around them, just like you might not get along with a roommate even, living with each other, around each other all the time. But when you see that work and you see it happen, there's just something respectful or like, I don't know, honorable about that, or something to it that just makes me go, fuck yeah, man. Like that feels right. Like the fact that their whole family is into it and doing it, it just, it's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause it's not easy to pull that shit off.
Yeah. And also that they care about, Red, or they care about 2077 more than they care about some arbitrary date. It's like, if you need extra time to make the thing, as opposed to, I would always pay more and wait more for a company to really focus on what's important than having to crunch and like fucking kill themselves to get a game made. It's not about that.
Exactly. And I think that's what it seems like they're doing. And I love that. It's so cool. So, but yeah, to wrap it up, thanks so much for joining me. I just want to plug some things here and then plug some of the things you've got going on. Yeah. Once again, everybody listening, I do this because I have a passion for Cyberpunk. I love this shit. I live and breathe it. Please give some support back. Share the podcast. Tune into Mulligan Live on YouTube. I stream, 2 games a week, 2 different teams a week live. Join in. Join the Cyberpunk Uncensored group on Facebook, the Instagram account, the fan page. Just get involved. We're trying to build up this community because we love it. And I would really appreciate the support back. That would be so cool. So just consider that. And then obviously on this episode, I really want to, remind everyone, show some support to Ellen and her team. They're doing some really cool shit with Roll to Cast. Check out that podcast. And Ellen, I want you to kind of, mention
Should I plug my shit?
Exactly. Yeah. Plug your shit. Let everybody know what's up and where to find you guys.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So I've been Ellen. I'm from Baby Beard Media. So you can look us up on all of the usual sites: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. On Instagram, you can see all of my cosplaying stuff, which are super dope. I've just launched some media pics from Cyberpunk, and they're really, really awesome. So check them out. We have 2 ongoing podcasts. We have Shut Up and Take My Podcast, which is a Futurama podcast, and obviously Roll to Cast, where you can find all of our delicious cyberpunky goodness. And that's
Roll,
for more support.
Roll ROLE to cast,
Yeah, ROLE, like actors, which is what we are. So check us out on there. We're also doing Let's Plays on YouTube, so you can always find our deliciousness there. And we're really looking for more supporters so we can, really pump out more and more seasons. If you want more Cyberpunk, if you want more Red, then hop onto our Patreon and give us your money. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys are doing other role playing games too. Obviously I'm passionate. I love Cyberpunk, but I also love role playing games. I to me it's always more than a game. It's like therapy. It's so much more. So that's another thing to point out is like anybody listening. I know you love Cyberpunk. That's why you're listening and you're here. But Roll to Cast and things that Ellen are doing, involve a bunch of other role playing games as you heard her talking about. So definitely look up all the pages she mentioned and her team and show them some support too. Any last words? Anything else that we forgot to mention or anything you want to mention?
Any last words?
Yeah, sounds very cyberpunk when saying that, huh?
I know. I guess just like, live well, chumbatas. Like,
hell yeah.
Die with your mask on if you've got to.
Yeah.
And just, try and show the corporations what's what. That's all I gotta say.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ellen. I really do appreciate you joining me, and I'll be talking to you in the near future about maybe some voiceover work. I'll be tuning into your podcast and your gameplay, and I'll be checking out your cosplay pictures on Instagram too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care, and take care, everybody listening.
Thank you. Bye.